Of course. Hello. Hello. Thank you all for being here. Let me share my presentation. Great. First of all, on behalf of the coordination team of NCSR Democratos, we would like to welcome you in the fifth webinar of this series of the webinars that will be implemented as part of the VAST project. Before start, we could make a short introduction of the VAST project. Just say that VAST aims to study the transformation of moral values through space and time, and how these values are communicated and perceived in contemporary times. And at the same time, its vision is to bring values to the forefront in the field of advanced digitization, providing an emphasis in those core values considered fundamental for the formation of our everyday life as citizens, such as freedom, democracy, equality, tolerance, dialogue, human dignity, and the rule of law. For being more specific, VAST project tries to study first the VAST of values through the analysis of intangible cultural heritage artifacts, choosing as a basis three different pilots. First is theater, the other is the science, and the third is the tradition. And then the other aspect is to study the present of values through an analysis, collection, and digitization of how values are communicated and perceived by the general public in a contemporary society. So we are talking about three pilots, and this webinar aims to have a short presentation of the educational activities created by the three pilot partners of the project. The first is the theater. We focus the current presentation. The other is science, that will be presented by our partner Museo Galileo. And the first is the tradition, which is mainly focused on the fairy tales museums and will be presented by the Fairy Tale Museum. Before start, I would like just to make a short introduction to the theoretical background of the design of these activities. And first of all, I would like to start with Court's learning cycle, where Court thinks that the learning process starts from a concrete experience, from an actual experience, where the learner comes across through observation with that, and through this process, she tries to reflect on that and somehow gain some knowledge. The fourth step is the most, let's say, demanding, where the learner trying out what he or she has learned. According to that, and having this as the core theoretical background of our design, we're trying to use art, and mainly artworks, and the main stimuli of this educational and learning process. For us, who are really active in the field of education, we really know the great value of art in the educational process, as art works in a parallel sessions. For example, at the one point, art helps the learner to express her self, feelings, and thoughts, and at the same time, through this experience, goes to a reflection of what he or she has perceived. So we could say that artworks are a trigger for the emergence of critical reflections, as well as emotions and imagination. According to Perkins, aesthetic experience, our contact with art, are linked to the social, personal, and other dimensions of life with strong emotional ties, which means that through observing an artwork can build the learner, the citizen who come across with that, can build certain important moods of reflection better than many other processes. A fact that clearly confirms the great value of art and how important it could be as an educational tool in our process. The Council of Europe mentioned that according to the competencies for democratic culture, the educator has to be focused in 4 different dimensions. It's not only that he or she has to promote and provide knowledge, but at the same time, the educator has to aware the learners about values, have to communicate values, as well as to cultivate and promote attitudes and skills, all of them relative to the democratic and inclusive culture that we would like to somehow build in our communities. So having this as the main and the core framework of our education design, we try to design various educational activities, values-oriented actually educational activities that address to different level of education, address to students of different actual level of education, as well as to the general public. Our educational activities are open access through our VAST project website, as well as the VAST platform. The links from both of them will be added in a while in the chat, and we were very pleased if you could visit them and send us your feedback, evaluation, and maybe it will be useful also for your everyday teaching or involvement in the field of education. So 3 different educational activities have designed and implemented by NCSR Demokritos in the framework of the pilot 1. It was about theater, and this is a short introduction about the methodology and the educational approach we followed and how we implement it with our audience. First of all, the first step of this activity is to talk, to introduce the concept of values and to create a common, let's say, conceptual framework. This activity was designed and addressed mainly for high school students, and starting from an ice-breaking activity, then we proceed to a discussion about the concept of values and how values are perceived from ourselves in our everyday life, and what are the values' role in the decision-making process. Having in our mind the circle of learning, the learning cycle that we introduced at the beginning, we introduced in this process a specific artifact. In this educational activity, the artifact, the stimuli that we use to start a more fruitful discussion with our audience is an excerpt from Antigone, Tragedy of Sophocles. So make a short introduction to the story. We really focus on the heroes and the ethical dilemmas that the heroes have to take into consideration to design. And then we kindly ask and encourage the students to annotate specific values on the text, on an expert of this Antigone tragedy. Annotated them, the next step will be somehow to reflect on these values and to create their personal mind maps, to create a mind map and to categorize, prioritize maybe the values according to their perception nowadays. After that, the next step, it's a group discussion. We encourage the students to work in groups to discuss and reflect on the values they annotated on the text. And through this discussion, somehow we encourage a fruitful dialogue about the diversity of the values, how diverse could be the values on the way that each of us will perceive, and somehow to create a group mind map. The same approach, methodological approach, has followed to all the 3 of these educational activities. So even in the second one, which is about ethical dilemmas through ancient tragedies, we follow the same, let's say, methodology, the same steps. First, we start with the ice-breaking activity and with the introduction to the values by creating somehow to build a common conceptual framework about values. Then the stimulus in these educational activities is not only Antigone, it's also another tragedy where we have more heroes and we somehow see their stories from different aspects. So again, here we ask from the students to choose one of the heroes or heroine that they would like to be focused on that, and somehow to create a hero's mind map, just to personalize the hero, to see the dilemma that had to deal with, to recognize the decisions that he or she could take, and at the same time to focus on the values that linked to his or her decision. So we are talking again for a personal, let's say, aspect about values perception and the creation of a personal mind map. Then the next step is here again a group discussion when currents the discussion and the collaboration between members in the groups, and together to follow through the discussion, somehow to create a common mind map according to the hero they have chosen. The third activity, it's called Clash of the Titans, Aristotle meets Galileo, and this is an approach somehow to better understand the two different aspects of these two different philosophers and scientists. So starting again by trying to build, let's say, a common conceptual framework of the values and their role in our everyday lives, then we proceed to a more specific approach about Aristotle's and Galileo's approach, and value-oriented, and then we again provide to them an expert of Galileo's letter, the letter to the Deutsche of Lorenz, and they encourage the students to annotate the values on the text. After that, a group discussions follow, where the students reflect on the values they have annotated. They somehow exchange ideas and thoughts on the way the values affected and their decisions in their everyday life, and then fruitful discussion continues in the assembly. And here is another activity which was implemented in collaboration with the Folklore Museum of North Macedonia in Thessaloniki, Greece, and it was it was a co-design activity focused in the exhibits that there are in the museum. This activity was addressed to younger children of primary school and their guardians, so it was an intergenerational activity, as we would like somehow to involve both parents and students. We started with the same approach, a discussion about values, as we would like the same again to start an introduction to the values and create a common conceptual framework. And then we proceed with a discussion about the values through fairy tales and specific heroes of the fairy tales. The fairy tales were chosen and were inspired by the museum's exhibits. So it was also a way to link the guidance in the tour in the museum with our activity, and somehow the exhibits to become the stimuli for this fruitful discussion about values. At the end, it was a common activity. We encouraged the participants, both adults and children, somehow to visualize the values they annotated, they discussed about. So we asked them to choose one of the value they would like, that there was the values that highlighted during the discussion, and give them a shape, create a logo, color them, and the result was very, very, very impressive for all of us. So in that point, we followed specific steps. That first we start, let's say, with an activity, more interactive activity, something linked to their everyday life. Then we proceeded to a discussion about values, but really linked and designed according to the ages of the audience and their special needs and expectations. And then through this artifact, heritage artifacts, who will be the stimuli, we try to create our artifact in a more open space. They are allowed to create anything they wish, somehow to visualize the values according to their perception. These are some quotes, some feedback we received from our audience. The feedback we have already received as these activities have piloting to schools and museums was positive. And the most important is that as the museum curators or the educators shared with us, is that we are talking about that activities that could be adapted from educator, from a museum curator in the framework of their everyday professional life, let's say. And this is our platform. The final outcome of the VAST project is the creation of a platform where all the materials will be uploaded there. The educational activities, the ones that I just presented and the others that will my colleagues presented after, have already uploaded there. And as I said at the beginning, we will be very pleased if you could visit the platform. You could come across with our educational materials provided and provide us your feedback. Of course, the digital platform, it's not only a place where you can find educational materials, it's a place, a platform where you can find more. You can find the methodology for capturing students' experience, the whole methodology that we follow during the VAST project implementation. Of course, you will find the toolkit for the design and implementation of educational activities. You can see research and action tools, all of them in an open access for anyone who's interested in. You can find the value annotating tools, the tools that we also use for in the framework of our activities, where the audience annotated the values on the text. And of course, there is the possibility to find some customized educational applications according to the needs and expectations of your work. Thank you so much for your attention. Please contact us and share with us any thoughts, feedback you find interesting. This was about the pilot one. I'm not sure if there is any comment, any suggestion, any question from your side. I would be very glad to give to share some thoughts. I think no. So I would like to give the floor to Carmen Gagliardi, who represents the Museo di Galileo. And she's here to present to us educational materials, activities have created from the museum in the framework of Pilot 2. Carmen, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dora. Before to share my screen, let me say that it's a great pleasure for me to participate in this webinar to explain the activities carried out by Museo Galileo within the VAST project, and above all to share this experience with other partners, so with Dora of Demokritos and Elena for Periphery Museum. Just a brief presentation of me. I'm Carmen Gagliardi, and I work within the staff of the educational department of Museo Galileo. And this is a working group consists of a small number of educators that are involved in all the aspects of the diffusion to the public, the diffusion of our collection, obviously. And so we design and develop activities for school groups, families, generic public. We keep in touch with teachers. We support the work of the booking office. We realize also books for children and so on. Now I'm going to share my screen. So, may you see my screen now?
Yes, yes, Carmen, thank you.
Okay, so for those doesn't for those who don't know Museo Galileo, and maybe after this meeting we'll have the curiosity to visit it live or virtually, I can say that Museo Galileo is one of the foremost international institutions of history of science, combining a notated museum of scientific instruments and an institute dedicated to research and documentation. So we have a lot of the departments at the museum, but also the ancient library, the library, the multimedia laboratory. And so now, as Dora said, Museo Galileo participates in the VAST project, where it carries out its activity within the pilot 2 values in scientific revolution text. And the initiative primarily focuses on the analysis of accurate selection of texts of natural philosophy and utopian literature, all of which, in fact, belong to an important historical period, the scientific revolution. This era was marked by important inventions and groundbreaking discoveries. So the choice of the test was made in collaboration with the University of Milan, and the choice of the test was made obviously considering to include the different literary genres to be consistent with the historical and scientific context of Museo Galileo's collection, but above all, as you can see in the slide, to be adaptable and explainable even to the very young people. Why this? Because as the other pilots, obviously, the objective is to analyze the relation between and the passage between the past and the present of values. So this is the core, the focus of all the pilots, and above all, and also of the pilot 2. And so the past means that the objective is the analysis to discern the prevailing values within this text, while taking into consideration the specific historical and philosophical context in which those works were written. This is important. And what is important? The presence. So the results of this research are important also to design educational activities to address to any kind of target groups in order to analyze disparities, similarities, and above all, the evolution in the perception of value, obviously by examining the feedback provided by the users. So what is the role of the Museo Galileo on the VAST project? To define the role of the Museo Galileo within the project, it was very important to reflect upon the specific identity of this institution. In fact, it's important to say for us this, that being a museum specializing in the history of science, Museo Galileo engages in discussion about whether a museum that showcases scientific artifacts should remain impartial regarding obviously ethical matters, or if it can maintain the neutrality of its collection while also stimulating the contemplation about a set of values associated with the significant scientific discoveries. Obviously, the second step was to understand the main goals of this direction. Obviously, the main goals was to create, design and to implement educational activities that could stimulate the reflection about the moral values. And by this point of view, for us, for the fact that I've said before, to be a museum specialized in the history of design, it was important to introduce the participant to the scientific instruments from different perspectives. As you can imagine, it was very important to, as I say, to embrace a new methodological approach by our point of view. Above all, to make clear this relationship between the past and the present. So, how the museum educators involved in the creative process and the realization of different activities approaches this. Many questions we had in our mind before to design the activities. So first of all, could be a museum a place that can stimulate a reflection on values, which is the role of the educators in this context. So how to stimulate this reflection without influencing the users. So this was very important because it was important this discussion between us and between the consortium. Also, this was important to have a view of co-creation. So I want to underline this because it's important for us. So how we start, where we start from? We start to approach the problem, obviously to make also a relationship between the analysis of the text, so the annotation, our identity, our background, and the objective of the pilot. We have thought to a common theme, a common argument that could be also common in the past and in the present. So the theme, the topic identified was that of the travel. Why this kind of choice? Because as you can imagine, the travel contains many meanings in the past, but also for nowadays. The travel could be physics toward the new discovery of new to see a new place we never visited, or could be ideal, virtual. In every case, the travel is a step that gives us the opportunity to have new knowledge. So we are not the same person when we begin the travel and when we after making physically the travel. Okay, so by this point of view, we thought that it is above all for the educational activity, this could be a cross-cutting and consequently an interdisciplinary theme, an interdisciplinary topic. So what was the steps after after this? Obviously, to identify and to select the target groups, we started by the primary until throughout the secondary school, so middle school in Italian and high school, until the general public. To select the topics adapted and more interesting for each kind of target, and above all, to study some tools to involve visitors, obviously, and also to have the possibility to set and digitize these experiences to arrive, for example, to implement the work and the material inside the platform. As you can see, I will describe after according to the specific activities, but we are questionnaire, games, mind maps, interviews, and so on. The choice of this tool were made above all because they were, according to us, easy to use. So with a view of sustainability, and another important thing is that they can be replicated in other contexts for those who could be interested in these topics. So for other educators of other institutions or other stakeholders and so on. In this view, obviously, the realization of the handbook that collect all the activities developed within the project is a very important tool, a very important result. And we want to say that this solidifies the spirit of cooperation between us, and obviously it represents a valuable resource for all the person interested in these topics. Okay, so also to share our methodological approach. Just to give an idea of the different steps, the schema we used in the different activity, I want to say you that all the activity start with the projection of a short video, a video that have to give the some sequence of images and also keywords to create a suggestion, and also to give this the sense of multisensoriality. This is important, very important to engage to have to create a nice breaking point. Okay. After this, there was a specific presentation to introduce the discussion about the values, to read some sentences. So some sentences obviously from the text analyzed, and the other important part of our activity that is common also in our educational offers is obviously to have a phase dedicated to the hands-on demonstration, because as I have explained before, it's important they understand the use of the instrument, but above all in this case, to understand the philosophical and theoretical context in which these instruments were used and employed. For this, sometimes it was important also to use some selected tests and also above all drawings. Okay, the final part of our activities is dedicated to the collection, to the original instruments. So the collection, the visit to the original instruments, to make also a comparison. But obviously, as also said, Dora said before, it was important to understand which kind of tools, as I said also before, which kind of tools we use to reach the different kind of targets. So you can imagine that the targets are different, so we have to study specific tools, games, mind maps, guided, or better, guided mind maps or mind maps, questionnaire, and so on. And also the teacher were also to the teacher we sent also in a phase of pre-visit the questionnaires, and other questionnaires at the end of the activity. Also to understand if they are related, these arguments, these topics will be related to their programs. And the same thing, so the questionnaire were used at the end of the theatrical performances thought and designed for the generic public. To have also the the feedback by the person who worked on the project, all the person involved, all the stakeholders, we have thought also to make some interviews to explain their vision about the project, their difficulties, their approach, and so on. But let me to also to give an idea of these activities, the thing I want to also say that these are original activities thought for the VAST project. Okay, by the primary until the generic public. I want to underline this, and I also underline that it was the first experiment about these topics. Just to give an idea, there is this fantastic creature in down lens. It was a challenge for us because you can imagine that for the children, for the kids of the first aged from 5 to more or less 5, 6 to more or less 9, 10 years old. It's important. It was important to study how to introduce these arguments. Because the thing is that probably they had not the concept of moral values, so how to approach them. Just to give an idea of the video at the start point of our activity, I want to show this. So I don't know if you're able to, yes. Oh, okay. This was to start to the short presentation, the video related to this activity that. The objective is to study some ancient maps before and after some important geographical discoveries, and for the travels of that time, probably the unknown place, the unknown lands, were also the lands where there were different strange things like the monsters, and is a way to introduce this topic, and the values addressed are experimentation, curiosity, knowledge, for example, dialogue, and so on. And this is, for example, the game studied to engage the kids, is to create create our personal monster, to reflect upon also the concept of monster, which is a monster. So they had this different 8 different master. They have to each master was divided in 3 parts, and they have to create their specific preferred master, choosing 3 pieces according to the values most important for them. And after this, you have to make arrays of values. So on a magnetic board, one for each master drawing. They were divided in many boxes. Each time a piece of a monster is used, the master advances. At the end, the number of these pieces used by the children make their master determining the winning value. So this is another, for example, for the middle school, astronomical discoveries and conquest, the relationship between scientific discoveries and the discovery of new lands. And also these are also the values introduced. So for example, and that they stand out, curiosity, knowledge, and so on. And also for this activity, we ask the children to choose from the 7 values discussed to take in our the values they wanted to take on our journey. So they wrote in these pieces the reason of this choice of their choice. The same for another activity for the middle school. I go fast because obviously we have not so much time, just to give an idea of this. The relationship between telescope and microscope from the useful entertaining science. It is about the reflection about the improvement of the technology, the relation between the improvement of the technology and the improvement of the scientific discoveries. Also in this activity, the values addressed are, for example, that of dialogue, communication, knowledge, the importance of the progress. In this case, we thought to a sort of guided mind map. So each group select a central key by a kit of a set of values already written in some little pieces, one of these, and they have to make the personal mind map, choosing the concept related to this in a term of equal, opposite, or consequence of this keyword. And at the end, they have to explain their choice, the choice of each group, obviously, because they were divided in groups. Sometimes it's very strange because the children, for example, mixed all the works, and they also explained their personal view. And that it is for example, for the high school, very interesting. Obviously, for the different kind of target, we have chosen another argument, talking about 3 important travelers like Galileo, Bacon, and Kepler. In this situation, obviously, we are moving in a different way. So before the visit, the student teachers were asked to complete a questionnaire. Another after the visit, this was also to understand is there was a change in their view before the visit and after the visit. So after the reflection and the discussion about the topics addressed. The important thing is that there were 2 steps in this. The children were could explain freely their feelings, above all reconstructing the telescope a telescope similar to that of Galileo. It was very important because it was to make clear the difficulties of that time, the difficulties to make the observation with this kind of telescope, and they were asked to write their feelings about this, their perception, what they think, when they reconstruct the telescope. And obviously it's very important because they had the time to discuss freely and to express their opinion. So the same thing, making a mind map like this, choosing 7 different values similar to that of the addressed to the middle school, but not guided, but they have to write up their words, their sentences, and so on. I just to give you an idea of the activity addressed for the to the generic public. We thought to an original play called the Galileo and Vespucci in Search of New World for Great Opportunities. As you can see in this image, is the phase, the steps in which we have written and taught, and the first experiments before to arrive to the performance. And why we choose this? Because we can thought to Galileo and Vespucci to the two phases of the travels, of the concept of travel I described it before. So Vespucci, the physical travel towards new lands, and Galileo, the virtual travel to discover a new sky, and but they are distant because they didn't live in the same period. So we imagine what we could be in which kind of dialogue could be between these two characters. And I want to give also only I don't know if I have time. Yes, I can. Yes,
because I'm sorry, Carmen. To be honest, we're out of the time because Elena has also her presentation.
I finished.
So if you can, yes, thank you.
Yes, I arrived to the conclusion, obviously. Yes, because an important thing that I want to say you that this performance was also performed for the a group of blind and visually impaired people in the occasion of the celebrating of the National Braille Day on the 21 of February, because for the museum it's very important that the museum has a special focus on the theme of inclusiveness. And obviously, I repeat that the handbook is an incredible resource. And for our part, we are convinced that the journey of values discovery continues throughout time and space. So that's all from
Great. Thank you so much, Carmen, for your very interesting approach and presentation. We greatly appreciate your work. The work of the museum.
I had a lot of things.
It's fine. I know. We are really motivated on that, so it's hard. And I would like to give the floor to our other dear colleague, Elena Aristodimou, who represents the Fairy Tale Museum in Cyprus, and she will make her presentation focused on the pilot 3. Elena, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Let me share my screen. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I will start first by providing a brief overview of the organization I represent, the Fairy Tale Museum in Cyprus. FTM was inaugurated in 2017, inviting visitors to an interactive journey in the world of culture and tradition through fairy tales, myths, and legends. It aims at preserving, promoting, and disseminating cultural heritage that includes fairy tales, folktales, myths, and legends. It further aims at fostering the universality of fairy tales, familiarizing with other cultures through their fairy tales, and enhancing the love for reading. Fairy tales are written folklore stories that are mainly grounded on magic and realistic or fantasy events. Stories known today as folk were first recorded during the 19th century in the excitement that followed the Grimm's children's and household tales in 1812. The ATU Index is a catalog of international folk tales based on a numeric system ranging from 1 to 2,399, organized according to thematic types, composed of individual plot elements or motifs. It was generally composed in German by the Finnish folklorist Antti Aarne in 1910, then translated into English, revised and expanded by the American folklorist Steve Thompson in 1928 and 1961, and later further revised and expanded by the German folklorist Hans-Jörg Uther in 2004. Fairy tales are a privileged means for the transmission of shared core values that drive our behavior. Just like in the other two pilots presented before, pilot 3 is separated in two phases, the past and the present of values. In the past of values, this pilot analyzed emotional and moral expressions conveyed in a number of selected tales by the Grimm brothers. It looked at how these values and moral judgments have been both received and adapted since the famous duo published them. It also employed a cross-cultural perspective involving the countries participating in the project, namely Portugal, Greece, Italy, Cyprus, and Slovenia. To do so, we compared original versions of the tales following the ATU classification system using advanced processing techniques, that is the VAST annotation tool, in combination with methodologies from the humanities, and we created a digital map of their evolution. The findings from the analysis of the past of values were utilized to create an educational program for museum visitors concerning these values. The aim of the educational program was to understand the visitors' views on how these values are present in their lives and modern society, and the extent to which they identify or not with the transmitted messages. Pilot 3 activities rely on the principles of non-formal education, where learning is achieved through interactive methodologies and tools, such as role plays, video games, and simulations. According to the Council of Europe's European Youth Foundation, non-formal education is complementary to formal and informal education and focuses on delivering structured education, which centralizes on the active involvement of learners. Participants are invited to be part of the process, that is, expressing feelings, values, beliefs, by linking its content to their real life. Non-formal learning activities aim to develop life skills as well as to strengthen the active citizenship of the participants. A central part of the learning process of NFE is self-reflection, where participants are guided to reflect on their experience, understand what they have learned, and how this knowledge gained can be utilized in their life. As the majority of the visitors at the Fairy Tale Museum are pre-primary and primary school children, 2 of the 3 activities that we created target these ages. Specifically, the first activity focuses on an interactive storytelling of the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs fairy tale, targeting children aged 6 to 9 years old. The second activity is also focused on an interactive storytelling, but this time through an online game using the fairy tale of Little Red Riding Hood, whereas the third activity focuses on teenagers and adults and centers on creative writing using values in fairy tales. Through the first activity, children are expected to come into contact with values as they appear at the fairy tale and in their lives. They are also expected to understand the meaning and role of values in today's life, enhance their social and emotional skills in the context of friendship, empathy, kindness, and other emerging values, exercise their critical thinking about behaviors as these emerge from the hero's behaviors, and to activate their imagination and spend some creative time. For the interactive Little Red Riding Hood online game, children are expected to come into contact with values as they appear at the fairy tale and in their lives, understand the meaning and role of values in today's life, especially with regards to the consequences that our actions have, make informed choices on the actions of the heroes and shape the continuation of the story, exercise their critical thinking about behaviors as these emerge from the heroes' behaviors, activate their imagination, and spend some quality time with their parents discussing the questions and choices of the game. For the creative writing values and fairy tale activities, activity, participants are expected to come into contact with the world of fairy tales and the values associated with them, understand the main functions and characters presented in fairy tales, as well as the role of values in today's life, learn about the morphology of the folktale as presented by Vladimir Prop, enhance their basic and special skills stemming from creative writing, such as creativity, critical thinking, writing of a fairy tale, introspection, and reflection, and understand how values influence and govern their lives as well as the society. Let's have a look now on how we structured the activities created. Starting with the interactive fairy tale storytelling for children using the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs fairy tale, we initiate the activity by engaging children into icebreaker games in order to help calm anxious children down and allow all to learn about each other. After breaking the ice, the activity commences with the instruction on how the narration and the hidden word game will be implemented. At specific intervals indicated in the handbook, the story is paused and questions on what has just been narrated are asked, with the answers written on a flip chart or on a projected laptop screen, with the relevant letter of the hidden word written in another color or highlighted. For more interactivity, sometimes specific dialogues from the fairy tales can be played by the children who are called in the middle and are assigned with specific scenes roles to play. By the end of the narration, the main value of the fairy tale is generated from the word search. We discuss about this value and try to encourage children to tell us what they understand when they hear this value, how it is revealed throughout the fairy tale, as well as to give us examples from their life and experience where this value is applicable. Moreover, we guide the discussion towards the identification of additional values emerging from the fairy tale, as we are placing the cards containing them in the middle of the open circle children are sitting. Children should choose one card as a response to our questions. The next part allows children to engage in one of their favorite activities, which is drawing. The children, together with the facilitator, give one color to each value previously discussed and justify their choice at the plenary. Then, in groups, they work together to color the hearts of the fairy tale heroes, that is Snow White, Queen, Dwarfs, and Prince, taking into account the values they think represent them. Last, each group presents its work and explains the choices made at the plenary. The final phase of the activity focuses on reflection and evaluation. In terms of reflection, the most important points are summarized, asking children for feedback to assess what they have learned. For the evaluation, the children are asked to place on a large wall thermometer a sticker, which will indicate their emotional state after the end of the workshop. If the experience satisfied them, they should place the sticker at high temperatures. If it got them bored and felt it was a waste of time, they should place the sticker at cold temperatures. The second interactive narration, that of the Little Red Riding Hood fairy tale, has the form of an online game. In this game, children embark on an interactive journey, uncovering values and making choices through interactive questions along the way. The game is available in 3 languages, that is Greek, English, and Italian. It has a book flipping form, and it includes narration of all text in all languages in order to support younger children that cannot read to play it, and also foster inclusivity for children with special needs and disabilities. As the story is being narrated, children are asked to make choices on how the heroes should act, and their choices determine how the story will continue. Besides choices, and at specific points in the progress of the story, questions based on values pop up, and children have to assess the behavior and actions of the heroes. Finally, for every choice they make and every answer they provide, children receive feedback, aiding them to understand the norms of society as well as the actions of the heroes. Moving on to the last activity developed by FTM in the context of the VAST project, which targets adults and teenagers, and it is based on creative writing. Just like in the children's activity, in this activity, we start with the execution of an icebreaker. If the facilitator wishes, and prior to the start of the activity, a pre-assessment questionnaire can be administered in order to not only assess the perception and opinion of participants towards the values presented, but also to assess whether the activity to be implemented will have an impact on those perceptions and opinions. That, of course, implies that there will be administration of a post-assessment after the main part of the activity is completed. The main part of the activity commences with a presentation on Vladimir Prop and his work on the morphology of the fairy tale, where he identified 7 characters and 31 functions that commonly appear in fairy tales. When the presentation is completed and the characters and functions are explained, it is time for dividing the participants into groups and assign at least 3 values to each group. They will then have to collaborate and create a short fairy tale through which the values given to them will appear. Upon completion, each group presents their fairy tale and the rest of the participants try to identify the values included. When all groups have presented their fairy tales, the facilitator initiates a discussion on the values that emerged, focusing it on the role these values play on both the participant's life and the society as a whole. In wrapping up the activity, and in the case a pre-assessment has been distributed, participants should complete a post-assessment questionnaire, whereas they should all then be asked to reflect in the groups they worked with on what they have learned, how the knowledge they gained can be used, and whether and how this knowledge they gained can improve their behavior attitudes in the future. It will be helpful if a set of reflection questions are prepared in advance to be given to them. Reflection can also have the form of self-reflection, where the questions are provided to the participants and they can complete them at their own time. One such example that can be used is the European Commission's Youth Pass. This activity can also take place online and is accessible via the QR code on the slide or by visiting the VAST platform. For those interested, the handbook containing FTM's activities is accessible via scanning the QR code provided in this slide. Thank you.
Thank you a lot, Elena. Very interesting, your presentation. Actually, we traveled with you through the fairy tales. Thank you so much. I don't know if there are any questions that you would like, any thoughts that you would like to share with us. Yes, Ari, please. Ari?
Yes, just a minute.
Yes, of course.
I'm trying to turn on my camera, but I can't. So, okay. So, thank you all 3 for these very interesting and it seems to me complementary presentations. I have a question for potentially all 3 of you. I think the cue is given by the first part of Dora's presentation when she was talking about learning through the emotional process related to art. Of course, she was talking about ancient drama, but it seems to me that all these activities that cut across all 3 projects, they are related to the expression of emotion as well as visual, let's say, cues. So I was wondering, how would you consider your own perception of values, like as all 3 of you participated in such activities and interacted with the research subjects, which are mainly children, it seems to me. I was wondering if your own perception of values or of specific values has changed in any way after you completed these projects and after you reflected as well on these projects, as your presentations clearly show. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Aris. Maybe I could start and then Elena and Carmen could, of course, share their thoughts with you. As you said, me personally, I could say that my whole involvement in that project somehow has changed me, like educator and like person as well, because all this involvement in the framework of values and all this interaction with students, of course, and with the general audience, it was a great value. What I have always in my mind when I started to have a workshop, when I visit a school, is that I'm not there to teach, for example, about values. I'm not the educator at this group, and this is not my, my main aim. I'm trying to just to aware them and to be as neutral as possible, and start a common reflection and discussion, a group discussion between the group. Of course, even if we, like educators, museum curators, or in any case, value communicators, even if we would like to be neutral, this is in practice is not so possible, because in any case, through our work, through what we do, what we say, we somehow communicate values. So in one case, I'm trying to be neutral, but on the other side, and through the discussion, somehow I also reflect. The reflection is an ongoing process that taking place during the whole workshop, and each group, it's different. That the dynamic between the groups changes the whole approach. So for me, I don't know if I gave you a specific answer to your question, but I would like to say that yes, I reflect anytime on this issue, and I'm really inspired of what I listen from the young people, how they perceive the values, how they visualize them, and this is a great asset, I could say, for me personally, like educator, like researcher, I don't know, and this is, I think, the most valuable output of our project.
Can you give an example of something that you said it was very moving for you? Can you just give one example?
Yes, of course. For example, talking about democracy. Democracy is how it's a value, yes, of course, but we can't speak about democracy if we can't exercise. Democracy is it's how we exercise it. So working with, let's say, learners comes from disadvantaged groups, like an experience that I had with with students of a second chance school, where in the population we had also immigrants and one refugee student. It was I don't know, it was inspiring for me how they could visualize democracy. We tried to make a collage, let's say, in the framework of our mind map, and the visualization of the democracy was very in a different aspect. So even if some things we think that are common for us, for all of us, like freedom, democracy, etc., it's not, because it's based always on our personal experiences and how we exercise that. And at the same time, even if we all of us agree that democracy, yes, of course, or freedom, or diversity, etc., values of great importance, we don't prioritize them all in the same way. And this is the way how we choose, we change our choices through time and space and time, let's say. I don't know if Ellen and Carmen would like also to share a thought with us.
If you want, I can start, Dora. And I want to say thanks to Aris for this question, because it's very interesting. And as I've explained, obviously, from our part, by the part of the educators, we make this question before to start, how we can simulate the reflection without influencing. Obviously, I don't think that it changed my personal point of view or my personal idea about the values, but I am very happy to see that the children and also the kids are very also interested in express their thoughts during and after the activity. Just an example, for example, if you asked which kind of values, or if there is a different perception. Yes, I think that there is a different perception, obviously, about around the age of the of the users. For example, for the kids, the winner of the race of is always more or less the courage. And for example, for the for the children of the middle school, it's important the idea of for example, the use of some scientific discoveries nowadays, what they represented for us. In which sense? For example, in the activity about the microscope, they say, for example, oh, it's important to use some discoveries for the public good, for the public society, but sometimes the some scientific discoveries brought to negative also, I don't know, results, because it's important the application of these discoveries. And for the high school, for example, sometimes I'm very surprised when there is some teachers that say as, for example, a children want to make a question, or he want to express his opinion, his or her opinion, and the teacher says us, oh, I'm surprised because you don't want to make an intervention in the classroom. So they are surprised that in this situation they are invited and stimulated to give their idea. And for them, for example, it's very important the value of cooperation, the value of knowledge. So thinking to the what happened to Galileo, so the importance of the liberty, the freedom of thought, the freedom of research. And for the generic public is different because you can imagine that we don't know which kind of background we have before, because we have not given them the questionnaires before the representation, before the performance. But the questionnaire at the end and the interview sometimes are very useful for the idea that they have, the perception, and it's also yes, a surprise for us because as I said, we cannot imagine where they live, their background. So I don't know if I've given you the right.
Yes, of course you have. But let me just give you a follow-up question, just like I did with Dora. You said that they surprise you. Can you, for example, give an example? What was the most surprising thing for you that you heard?
For me, Aris, or for Dora?
For you, I just said that, you know,
Yes.
like I gave Dora a follow-up question, I'm giving you one. What was your surprise, for instance?
Reading the questionnaires on in general.
Yes.
And yes, as I said, is the fact that they could consider by our obviously point of view, the fact that they are not surprised to find and to see the museum as a place where they can engage also this kind of discussions. And also, for example, for the kids, the reaction, because we probably at the beginning, as I've said, we make this question, but the kids, they have no the idea of the moral values. And so when they express clearly this concept, courage or freedom, obviously not other, for example, values like tolerance is a little bit difficult for them, okay? But when they these are little example. Obviously, there are a lot of also experiences, but little examples that, by my point of view, but also I think by the other educators, they were surprised in making the activities. Yes, and so I'm very happy to hear that this could they need. Usually they need to deal with these topics at school, but also the general public, because probably, I don't know, it's also a particular period in which we talk about the importance of values. And so they are not I don't know, they want to express. So this is for me a surprise.
Great. Thank you a lot, Carmen. Thank you for your answer. Elena, would you like to add something, or do you feel that everything was said?
But I will take it in the other direction.
Okay.
Actually, in the surprising part that Aris mentioned.
But maybe a short one if we can, because we are also a little bit late.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah, short one. What surprised me the most from the activities that we've done in the high schools, just to clarify, we went to one high school that has a lot of refugees, together with Cypriot students, and the other one was a private school, theoretically of the rich people paying and stuff like that. And we had the same activity, and what surprised me is that how tolerant and accepting and how embracing solidarity were the children, the teens of the public school were, and how, I won't say racist, but intolerant, let's say, were those of the private school. It was way too surprising, because even though they think that they respect and understand some concepts and some values, they don't really embrace them. And for example, we had one boy there saying that homosexuality is a mental illness. So you're freaking out and you're trying not to show it. So, so yeah.
Yes, you're right, Elena, you're right. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. Yes, I agree with everything. And just like Elena said in the end, I think it is very important to expose ourselves to these different views. And because you mentioned like refugees, it is very important to understand how the very same concept can be interpreted in a different way depending on one's position. And also it's important to ask people like refugees, let's say, about the values of the European cultural values from the perspective of people who have let's say suffered from European culture and European civilization in terms of colonization and so on and so forth. It is quite interesting. It enriches not only the research data, but our own kind of conceptualization. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Aris. Thank you for your question. It's a big discussion what you started. I hope we will have a chance to later to another maybe webinar or discussion to go ahead. I would like to thank you so much for your participation. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Elena, for all your work. It's greatly appreciated. And see you to the next webinar. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for your attention, for your all your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.